Okay, so imagine for a second that your brain is the most advanced, high-powered computer on the planet. It's processing literally millions of inputs a second, just keeping you alive and functioning. But here's the catch. This incredible hardware, it's running on outdated, completely buggy source code. Seriously, it's an operating system riddled with these cognitive shortcuts and blind spots that make you, me, all of us, incredibly vulnerable to outside influence. So, welcome to this explainer. Today we're going to pop the hood on human psychology. We're going to uncover exactly how your mind is being hacked, and far more importantly, how we can actually rewrite the code to take our power back. I want you to stop right now and seriously ask yourself, how many of your daily choices are actually your own? Like, really think about it. What if the things you buy, the goals you're setting, even the core beliefs you hold, aren't actually the result of your own free will? What if they're just the byproduct of invisible environmental triggers and deep-seated mental fallacies? The kind of unsettling truth here is, we really aren't always the ones in the driver's seat. All right, let's get right into it with Section 1, the autopilot mind. So we're going to move fast here, kind of simulating that distracted, chaotic mind of ours, just to expose the specific cognitive bugs that routinely hijack our rational thought. And you know, it's fascinating how ancient this first bug actually is. You've probably heard Aesop's fable of the fox, right? The fox jumps and jumps, trying desperately to reach this bunch of juicy grapes, but he just can't get high enough. Well, instead of admitting he lacks the skill, which, let's face it, really hurts his ego, his brain resolves the conflict by just deciding, hey, those grapes were probably sour anyway. And look, we do this literally every single day. Didn't get that promotion? You tell yourself the boss was totally unfair. Actually, scratch that. We do this with almost everything. Your brain heavily prefers a comfortable, easy lie over the exhausting mental stress of holding two conflicting truths. Now, this next bug is arguably one of the most powerful mind traps you will ever encounter. We constantly use mental anchors, like starting points, to make sense of the unknown. But what happens when that anchor is just totally random? Check this out. In an incredible study, experienced German judges were asked to roll a pair of loaded dice right before sentencing a shoplifter. The dice were rigged so they only landed on a 3 or a 9. The judges who rolled a 9 handed down sentences averaging 8 months, but those who rolled a 3, 5 months. Let that sink in. A completely random dice roll completely altered a human being's freedom. No way, right? But it's absolutely true. And this brilliantly illustrates how this anchoring effect is exploited against us in the real world, every single day. Have you ever walked into a store and seen a ridiculously expensive, say $150 dress displayed right at the front? Well, spoiler alert, that dress isn't actually there to be sold. It's an anchor. It's literally a piece of malicious code injected into your operating system, so that when you walk to the back of the store and see a $50 dress, your brain automatically calculates it as an unbelievable bargain. You're not saving money, you're just being anchored. Which brings us to Section 2, the art of presuzation. Okay, so now that we know our minds have these built-in vulnerabilities, it's time to look at the external forces, basically the hackers, who use them to manipulate us before they even make a request. The psychologist Robert Cialdini offers a really powerful metaphor here. Think of the message you're trying to deliver, your pitch, your ask, as a seed. You can have the absolute highest quality seed in the world, but if the soil hasn't been prepared first, it's just never going to grow. Persuasion is the act of preparing that soil. It's exactly what you put in front of your message to subtly change the receiver's identity and mindset in that exact moment, making them highly, highly receptive to your seed. So, the crucial point to take away from this is just how incredibly subtle these environmental primes can be. Get this. A researcher got vastly more women to agree to give out their phone numbers simply by asking them while standing near a flower shop. Why? Because the flowers subconsciously prime the brain for romance. Or take online shoppers. Those looking at a website background of fluffy clouds bought the most comfortable, expensive furniture, while those seeing pennies in the background bought the cheapest. Or how about a salesman who's failing to sell a $75,000 product? He just started joking, well, I obviously can't charge you $1 million for this, and suddenly that $75,000 price tag felt totally reasonable. That's anchoring again. It's all about setting the stage before the curtain even rises. Moving right along to Section 3, Systems over Goals. All right, it is time to pivot from defense to offense. We need to patch our behavioral code, and we're going to do that using the core principles from James Clear's work on habits. Have you ever tried to build a good habit, you put in a few grueling weeks of effort, saw 0 results, and just threw in the towel? We all have. This is what's called the plateau of latent potential. Think of an ice cube sitting in a freezing room. When you heat that ice cube from -15 degrees to -1, It looks like your effort is doing absolutely nothing. The cube remains completely solid. But here's the secret. That work isn't wasted, it is being stored. The exact moment you hit 0 degrees, boom, it melts. The tragedy is, most people quit at -1. They give up right before their accumulated efforts finally cross that threshold into a massive breakthrough. And this brings us to the sheer mathematical reality of the 1% rule. Look, we're a society obsessed with massive, overnight transformations. But if you just focus on getting 1% better every single day, just a tiny, almost invisible change, that compounding effect mathematically results in you being nearly 37 times better by the end of a single year. 37 times. Time basically magnifies the margin between success and failure. It will absolutely multiply whatever you feed into it. But to make those tiny 1% changes actually stick, you have to completely abandon traditional goal setting. I know, it sounds counterintuitive, but goals are outcome-based, which means they rely on sheer motivation. And let's be honest, motivation is incredibly fragile. Instead, you've got to shift to identity-based changes. You don't say, I want to run a marathon. You tell yourself, I am a runner. See the difference? Once a behavior is tied directly to your identity, you no longer have to force it. It's just who you are. And every small action you take from then on is simply a vote to prove that new identity to yourself. Section 4, the habit loop. So to truly rewire the mind's code and lock in that new identity, we really have to understand the foundational sequence that drives basically all human behavior. These are the 4 laws of behavior change. If you want a good habit to stick, you must aggressively remove all friction. Step 1, make the cue obvious. Literally put your gym shoes right by the door so you trip over them. Step 2, make it attractive by pairing it with something you already love. Step 3, make it ridiculously easy to start. Maybe use a 2-minute rule. And finally, step 4, make it satisfying so your brain gets a nice little hit of dopamine. Now, want to kill a bad habit? Just invert the laws. Make it invisible, unattractive, difficult, and painful. Ultimately, you are the absolute architect of your own environment. This quote here brilliantly encapsulates everything we've just been talking about. You do not rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. When the pressure's on, when you're exhausted, stressed out, and your willpower is completely depleted at the end of a long day, your lofty, ambitious goals, they aren't going to save you. You will inevitably fall right back on your default programming. But a bulletproof system, one that's built on tiny daily habits and a highly controlled environment, well, that runs on autopilot, even when your motivation completely vanishes. And finally, Section 5, the deep work advantage. Okay, let's take a collective deep breath and slow our pacing down a bit here. We've patched the mental bugs, we've installed better behavioral habits, and now it is time for the ultimate upgrade to your brain's processing power. The reality is, the modern world wants you distracted. It basically rewards shallow work, answering emails instantly, constantly pinging messages, doom scrolling. But here is the massive hidden danger. Every single time you switch from one task to another, your brain doesn't just cleanly, instantly pivot. A piece of your attention stays stuck on the previous task. This is a concept called attention residue. So if you're constantly checking your phone every 15 minutes, you're navigating your entire life in an impaired, cognitively diminished state. You are quite literally completely destroying your own ability to perform at a high level. And the sheer biological reality of how we achieve mastery is absolutely fascinating. Cal Newport uncovered that true elite performance isn't just magic or raw talent, it is myelin. When you engage in deep, uninterrupted focus on a really complex task, your brain physically wraps this fatty tissue, called myelin, around the specific neural circuits you're using. This insulation basically allows those neurons to fire faster, cleaner, and with way less effort. Deep work isn't just a productivity hack. It literally rebuilds the physical structure of your brain for genius-level output. But you might be wondering, how do you actually do this in a chaotic, noisy world? Well, you have to pick a philosophy. You could go monastic, completely isolating yourself from the world like a hermit. If that's a bit too extreme for your boss, try bimodal, where you split your week between deep retreats and shallow maintenance. Now, if you work a standard 9 to 5, the rhythmic philosophy is probably for you, blocking out the exact same hours for deep work every single day. And if you're a crazy busy parent or an executive on the go, the journalistic approach is your best friend. It means ruthlessly dropping into a deep state the exact moment a free hour opens up. The key takeaway here is to intentionally build the framework that fits your specific reality. So we've covered a massive amount of ground in this explainer today. We've exposed the hidden mind traps that dictate your choices, we've learned how to pre-suade our environments, we've patched our buggy code with atomic systems, and hopefully we've unlocked the elite processing power of deep work. You now possess the tools to actually take the wheel. So take a look at the blank slate of your newly upgraded mind, and I want you to ask yourself this one final provocative question. Now that you actually have control, what will you choose to focus on next?